Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Ba-da-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Oh man, I'm completely frickin' burnt out. Like I'm completely frickin' burnt out. Like I know I said it. I've been saying it for weeks now. I've been saying it over and over again. But boy, is it ever just the truth. I don't want to do anything. I don't want anyone to talk to me. I don't want anyone to do anything with anything ever. Everything is stupid and everyone is dumb. The world has gotten dumber and dumber to me, even dumber than before. And I'm really, really struggling to, I don't even know, like put words to it anymore. That things are getting into a type of absurdism that I can't even truly express. That even as, thank you, Ligon Dizzy, even as, good to see you by the way, bud. Even as the system of capital is obviously in this free fall collapse, we have the opportunity to say outside, oh goodness, Cotton. I'm really sorry to hear that, bud. Cotton says a woman was murdered outside of my apartment on Memorial Day. I watched her go. She got shot up. Holy shit, dude. Dude, every time you tell me a story about what's going on around you, it sounds really wild. Like, it sounds really wild what's happening around you. Just completely, like, it's a portrait of decay. It's a portrait of this collapse that I just keep hearing from you. And I hope you're doing okay out there, because it sounds constantly intense. Like, I'm complaining because capitalism is grinding me down. That's my complaint. But you're experiencing that as well as this, like, incredible system of violence that seems to be going on around you. You know? And it's the denialism that's really starting to get to me. You know? It's that there are still people who are in this society who are living in this incredible state of total denialism, that they just refuse to acknowledge that things have gotten as bad as they have gotten. And instead, every opportunity we have to show that we're even interested in moving the bar moderately, slightly, in any direction towards the left, away from this lunacy, we consistently seem to double down. We consistently seem to double down. And that we're just not interested as a people in righting this ship. That we're not interested as a people in saying, hey, we got to do something. We got to do something about this. Oh, I understand that, Cotton. Thinking about buying a vest, don't want psychos to construe it as a challenge. But I can't even imagine what it would be like to live in a situation where you're even making that consideration. Where that's even a consideration. Like that, like what? Like what the fuck are you even talking about? You're genuinely telling me that you're living in a situation right now where you're actually considering and contemplating seriously getting yourself a bulletproof vest to protect yourself from this sort of thing. Like, how can anyone take seriously the society that they live in if this is what its people are having to deal with? How are there people Like, this is the big question that I continuously am finding myself asking. Like, how can you take this seriously? How can you genuinely believe that everything is fine when these are the outcomes? When the outcomes is a society that is obviously becoming more violent, a society that's obviously becoming poorer, a society that's obviously in decay. And there are genuinely people out there who are attempting to defend it. That's what's incredibly wild to me. That they are actually trying to defend the system that's obviously falling apart beneath their feet. And it's baffling to watch. Like, it's incredible to watch. Like, I think the thing that's the most surprising about this moment in human history is that I was always under the impression, or the narratives that I grew up with, and the narratives I was surrounded by, was this belief that there would be a conflict, or there would be a clash, that there would be some kind of large-scale climactic moment in which humanity would justify itself, that there would be this forces coming together, and that humanity would rise to the occasion. But it's not going to do that. Like, it isn't actually going to do that. Like, the West isn't actually going to rise to the occasion. It is going to collapse. One of the things that's coming out of this situation in Alberta, so if you're not here in Canada, then maybe you don't know the story. Danielle Smith leads the UCP, that's the Conservative Party, to an Alberta majority government. It's not a complete and total wash for the NDP, the New Democrats, because the New Democrats increased their seat count. They increased the amount of power that they had. Their leader is likely going to stay on, and so take another kick at it, especially as another 4 years of these desperately fascistic conservatives entrenches itself into Alberta, and Albertans become more and more aware that the system of abandonment and extraction is entrenching itself into their daily lives. But not to say that the NDP in Alberta are going to be saviors or anything, that they're actually going to attempt to turn the ship in some kind of way, but at least it would be a signal to somebody and anyone anywhere that the society is actually trying to save itself. And one of the big responses that seems to be coming out of the NDP and supporters of the NDP is that the NDP needs to disconnect itself from federal politics. That Alberta and the Alberta Conservatives do a pretty good job of antagonizing the federal government and antagonizing federalism generally. And when I look at Danielle Smith's Conservatives, it flows very neatly into the idea that I have of the future of this country, which is one of balkanization, which is one of the country breaking apart steadily, because certainly Alberta doesn't trust the Trudeau government, but it doesn't look like the Trudeau government's going to go anywhere. And if you can't actually engage seriously in politics, well, it is only a matter of time until the people who are being ruled by these sycophants, by these losers, are going to stop tolerating it, are going to just simply come to believe that we'll be better off by ourselves and better off alone. Like, this is essentially the libertarian ethos. Like, what I keep seeing it. It's gaining traction. It's gaining power. More and more people are beginning to speak like libertarians. More and more people are beginning to connect to that ethos. Well, at its base, the libertarian ethos is balkanize the country. Everything should break apart. It's every man for themselves. We should all just, everyone should just live off the grid and try to do for themselves. And there is no such thing as a collective good, and there is no such thing as a collective enterprise, and there's no such thing as everybody getting together and making a decision together rationally for what's good for the collective whole. And certainly if you believe that on a one-to-one sort of basis, then you definitely believe that on a larger basis. You definitely believe that in terms of like the city that you live in. Like you definitely think that your city should not be paying taxes to the state or the province. You definitely think that the state or the province should not be paying taxes to the federal government. So it's an ideology of balkanization. It's not trying to build something bigger. It's trying to destroy all of that. It's trying to do that, and that's what's taking hold in our country. That's what's taking hold in our country. And so, to me, it is just kind of about enjoying the ride, isn't it? As best as you can. I find myself kind of feeling very fortunate in this moment because I don't have that kind of violence surrounding me, you know? That, like, my life is, I mean, it's annoying. Like, it's annoying having to go to a place that I don't really care that much about to do a job that I don't think is that important. But at least it's providing some joy for someone. At least when someone comes down to this place, there's someone there who can help them, and someone there who will give them something nice, something that they'll like. But like, I know for myself, like I'm sitting here thinking about, like I live in a 1-bedroom apartment, and I'm thinking of partitioning it out and starting to do an Airbnb with it, because the rent's getting so outrageous, because things are getting so expensive. And I think it would actually be successful because, again, rent's gotten so outrageous and everyone's so desperate. So if I just offer like a reasonable rate, right, for a room, I think I'd actually be pretty successful. Like, how are we meant to deal with all of this? Like, how are we meant to deal with a society that is obviously collapsing? Like, obviously. Yeah, I would be sorry for the woman and her family as well. Like, how are we meant? Like, how do the capitalists intend to keep any of this going? Like, how do they actually intend to make it so that people don't just abandon all of this and abandon everything around them? Like, that to me seems to be kind of the big question on the table. That if you abandon people so thoroughly, if you abandon people so thoroughly that they have nowhere to go, they've got nowhere to turn to, they've got nothing going on, well, then what's to stop them from abandoning you back? And it's just kind of, yeah, I honestly don't know how we aren't balkanized now. I really am flabbergasted. I think people kind of are just living in hope, really. I think momentum is carrying the day. That, like, sure, we're all going to jobs that we hate. Sure, things are in this kind of state of decay, but it's not so bad, right? It's not so bad. Like, I eat, I have food, right? My rent is paid. You know, I can go down to like a little restaurant and have like wings on a Wednesday. You know, I did that today. I went down to the beach, right? Like I can Well, I have days off where I can, sort of fall asleep for a minute, right? Like, so I guess like things aren't so bad that, and people can sort of fall into this pattern of momentum that this is normal. I think that's the big one. Like, one of the things I think about a lot is like when I was growing up, I was in a community that like believed that Jesus Christ was coming back. Every Sunday we would walk into a room together and we would genuinely sing songs about Jesus. Like, Jesus, he's my redeemer. Like, we would sing these songs together collectively, and that was normal, right? And I think that plays a lot into it. That like everything has just kind of become normal. Like, car culture is considered normal. When if you actually step back from it, you actually take a step back from the automobile industry and the car culture and think to yourself, does this need to actually be the way it is? You realize very, very quickly how insane it is. Like, the automobile and car culture is insane. It's insane what we've done. And the infrastructure that we've built, the policies that we've put in place. The idea of the automobile itself is not horrible, but like the number one vehicle that gets sold right now are trucks that are as big as World War II tanks. Like, and nobody can actually talk seriously. Yeah. Here's the deal. I am 100% okay with balkanization. If you're one of these weird Christian nationalists, I don't want to be ruled by them, and I don't want anything from them. Take Florida. Take Texas. Yeah, things are getting really bad in Florida, eh? Things are getting really, really bad in Florida. I keep seeing videos and I keep seeing little things about how the legislation that they're passing in Florida is literally making the immigrant population leave, and that all of the jobs that the immigrant population was doing are just now not being done, and it's for good reason. It's because the jobs don't pay, right? That if you were an immigrant fleeing a country that was being taken over by cartels or was being bombed by the United States, coming and working for like $2 a day or $2 an hour, right? It seems at least it's something, right? At least it's something. But now the capitalists are even preventing that from happening, right? Now they're preventing that from happening. Yeah, content, but just go away and don't even bother me in mind about your religious shit. But that's the thing, is it's coming to our doorsteps. Like, it's coming to our doorsteps now. That's the thing about what is happening. Like the religious right is not going to stop with trans people. It's not going to stop with immigration reform. It's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. It's going to continue, and it's going to get bigger, and its ideas are going to get more and more brazen, and its ideas are going to get more and more ridiculous. Like, what we are seeing now is just the beginning of the absurdity. Right? Like, what we are seeing now is just the beginning of the absurdity. And just wait. Wait until the dollar declines. Wait until we're in the more serious waters. Wait until the economy is wallowing. Right? Like, not just sputtering, but truly, truly, truly stopped. Like, things are going to get really fucking wacky really, really fucking soon. And we're already seeing pretty clear signs. Like, here's a picture that I found on the internet that it seems like such a little thing. It seems like such a little thing, but this picture is the indication of what's coming in the future. Like, wait for Walmart to start selling fascism. Well, here it is. Like, here it is. Here's Walmart selling you fascism. Right? Kevin, good to see you, bud. I hope you're doing well, bud. I hope you're doing well. I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. That the system of capital is burning me out really, really, really hard. I never feel like I get a moment to myself. I never feel I feel like the moments to myself that I do get are me simply licking my wounds. Like I injured a muscle in my arm maybe about a month ago now, and it simply cannot heal. It simply cannot heal. That I just need to start. I need to stop using it. I need to let it heal, and it's just not being allowed to do so because I have to continuously move forward. Right? I have to continuously move forward because I've got bills to pay. Yeah, my favorite one of these is I went outside once, too many minorities. Right? Midnight Rose. Oh, Midnight Rose raising an excellent point. And a correct one, Midnight Rose. Let's be skeptical. Let's be skeptical. The skepticism in me tells me those signs can't be real and sold in a Walmart. We've seen people put things in displays and claim they're being sold before. Particularly with LGBT stuff, though. Like, common sense would say that it can't be. You know what, Midnight Rose? I like that you're given the benefit of the doubt, and you're right. You're right. Like, this could just be some Photoshop nonsense. Sure. I'm, like, no longer really capable of vetting things anymore. Like, one of the things that's really interesting about what I'm doing and what I have been doing is, like, during the COVID period, I had a lot more time. And I was really able to vet things and do a lot of research. I remember how much research I was doing, man. I was so fucking... And I loved it. I loved, like, digging into big source documents. I loved doing that kind of stuff. Like, the whole Uyghur genocide narrative, man. The Uyghur genocide, right from the beginning, I was like, nah, this is bullshit. Right? This is bullshit. Right? Like, right from the beginning, I was saying to myself, this Uyghur genocide is total nonsense. The moment I heard about it. And I even made a video where I said it was true before I even looked and found anything really out about it. And then I started doing research and started digging. I was like, yeah, in fact, right? But I can see, though, now that I'm doing this, while simultaneously also essentially working full-time with this fucking jackboot on my back all the time, how I could just see how people would just tune right out. Like, they would just tune right out because they're so exhausted all the time, right? They're so exhausted. People are so exhausted all the time that we can't possibly find our feet to even begin to become politically activated. That one of the big reasons why I think voter turnout is as bad as it is because people are just completely exhausted. Like, we're working more now than medieval serfs. Like, come on with this shit. Are you kidding me? Like, when do we actually live a life? When do we actually live a life? Right? Like, we're all moving forward with these mythical narratives about how everything's gonna be great, and we're all yeah, and I think CR Strifey's onto something. I think they're trying to whip people into a frenzy and start trying to kill each other. Sure. Like, I think that the rich who are running this country don't really care about how they manage to maintain their power. And I think that an internal civil war, especially one based on race relations, right, or gender relations, is perfectly fine by them. I think they're perfectly fine by them. Yeah, it's why I have a hard time getting into activism and organizing. Work keeps me exhausted all the time, and the few days I have off, I just want to try and relax. It's on purpose, of course. Yeah, I do think that the only solution is, like, straight up, I think we have to start setting, like, one day a month. We have to start organizing locally so that one day a month we all get together in, like, a pub. and talk about how we're going to deal with this. I think that's the only way forward. Because everyone's so fucking exhausted. Everyone's so overworked. Everyone's so depleted and destroyed on purpose that I do think but I do think you can convince a person to give up one day a month. That's not a big ask. Not even a day, like one evening a month. Just come to this place, have a meal. Let's listen to some music and talk about how we're going to continue doing this. Like, that's something that I would like to set up for myself in my local community. That's something that I would like to do. I'm thinking about going to that Enough is Enough event. What event is this, CR Strifey? I'd like to know more about it myself. Like, event. Where can I find out about this, my man? Because, like, it's getting ludicrous. Like, it's just getting ludicrous. And the defenders of capitalism are getting more and more hysterical. Like, not just hysterical like, oh, you're so funny, but, like, they live in a state of hysteria. Where, like, one of the things that I'm watching right now, and that has been kind of fascinating me right now. Hold on. Enough is Enough. Ontario labor. Yeah, here you go. Like, I'm watching an exchange that's been happening on TikTok over the last couple of weeks between this guy. What's his name? Ben? Where is this guy? Come on. I had him right in front of my face. Anyway. The Foundation for Economic Education is one of these far-right, ridiculous nonsense organizations, like the Fraser Institute, that produces just these absolute losers. Here is one such loser, right? And these losers are on YouTube. Yeah, Praxben and Rathbone, you know about it, Midnight Rose. So there's a fellow, he calls himself Rathbone on TikTok, and these two gentlemen have been going back and forth. I was under the impression that Ben was literally a child. Like literally like a 17 or 18-year-old kid. That was more or less my impression of him. And essentially the conversation is Ben making the claim that the Soviet Union intentionally killed millions of its own people, and then Rathbone saying, where's your evidence? And then Ben failing to provide evidence for 2 weeks. For 2 weeks straight. And like literally making video after video after video after video after video about the subject, and then Rathbone pointing out this isn't evidence. Because it isn't. Like, Ben will produce an article that basically says there was a famine that we assume is a genocide, but it's not evidence of the genocide. And it just keeps going back and forth to the degree that I genuinely think that Ben actually thought that this was going to be a slam dunk. I genuinely thought that he was going to, like, I genuinely think that he thought that this was going to be easy, that he was going to embarrass this Rathbone guy. But very steadily, I think he's starting to recognize that he's wrong and that it's a failure. And yeah, I know this is what's amazing, right? The argument wasn't even about that. It's that Ben used a reduction fallacy to change the topic to the Soviet Union supposedly genociding its people. And that wasn't the conversation. Yeah, it's ridiculous. What do you expect? He's an ANCAP, literally denies that the scientific method is valid. Yeah. Like, I mean, but near as I can tell, he's a little kid. But this is what I'm saying, is that these are the defenders of capitalism now. These are the people who are actually standing up that is actually standing up to defend. And but the problem is that they're extremely well funded. That's the problem. Like the Foundation for Economic Freedom, all of its people, like for God's sakes, it's got connections to the Koch brothers, right? Jack Kemp. Like we're talking about big money here. Big money here. And the people who are the defenders of capitalism are no longer like these eloquent, well-spoken, thoughtful-sounding people. They're childish losers who sound like children. And are paid to be stupid, and are paid to be illiterate. And my favorite part of the argument is when Ben cited someone that works for the same foundation as him as a primary source. Look, it would be so, and what's actually, I actually do recommend that people go and try to find this conversation on TikTok between Rathbone and Prax Ben, because it's very illuminating. It's very, very illuminating. And the reason why it's so illuminating is that Ben's claim would be outrageously easy to verify. It would be outrageously easy to verify. Like, really, the more you think about how easy it would be to verify, the stupider it becomes. The idea that it would even be, like, this is what the capitalists have kind of banked on, is that the claim is so outrageous, right? Like, it's classic Goebbels, right? Tell a lie big enough, people will believe it. Because it's so over the top and it's so outrageous. The Soviet Union intentionally killed millions of its own people. And if you make this claim that the people will go along with it, because, well, you can't be lying about something that's so obviously, that would be so obviously falsifiable. Well, all you have to do, it turns out, is just ask for any evidence whatsoever, right? Just use any evidence whatsoever. But it's even worse than that, Midnight Rose, right? Midnight Rose says all Rath is asking for is for Ben to use the same methodology that Rath used in his 10-minute TikTok video about U.S. imperialism to prove the genocide to the same standards that the Nazis were charged. And he simply can't. Yet the standard of proof has become show anybody talking about it. Like, this is where we're at in this conversation, and it's actually outrageous. It's outrageous that the culture has been operating under a principle of just saying things and believing them to be true because they said them. That's more or less what Ben does, and more or less what all of these capitalists have been doing. Is that, of course it's true, we said so, and like, think about how easy it should be to prove that the Soviet Union intentionally killed its own citizens. Really think about how easy that should be, right? What kind of evidence would you suspect that you would have? That if the Soviet Union actually killed millions of its own citizens intentionally, well, you would certainly expect to see any Soviets talking about it, right? That you should definitely expect to see a single bureaucrat, a single person, a single journalist, a single political advisor, a single Russia watcher, a single Soviet, right? In the Soviets themselves. Stalin would have made a speech, right? That if the goal of the Soviets was to commit a genocide against the Ukrainians, they probably would have talked about it. And this is how bad, this is how low the bar is for the providing evidence for these claims. Literally show a single Soviet even mentioning it. Like even saying out loud, yeah, we're going to cause problems for these Ukrainians. Like even an intention of doing harm. Anything. And he simply can't. And they simply can't. And what's interesting about this conversation that's been going on, and what's interesting about it, and why I can't stop thinking about it, and why it keeps coming back and coming around in my head, is that I genuinely think that Ben believes it. I think that Ben is, like, he gets accused of being called a bad faith actor, but I don't think he is acting in bad faith. I think he just believes what he says is true. And he's being confronted with the fact that it isn't. He's being confronted with the fact that it's not. And it's the reason why he keeps making more and more videos about it. Not because he needs to convince us, but because he needs to convince himself. That he needs to believe that this evidence, that this is the thing, that this is the thing that's going to make it undeniable. This is the thing that's going to make it true. This is the thing that's going to do it. Oh, here's 2 guys from Harvard discussing it. That makes it true. Oh, here's an economist looking through census data. That makes it true. Here's a decontextualized manifest that says it's going to move some grain around. That makes it true. But over and over and over again, like, a guy like this should just walk away from the conversation, right? Like, a guy like this should just shrug and be like, oh, well, and walk away from the conversation. But he can't. He can't walk away from the conversation. Because I think that he has stumbled upon one of these things that is actually possible to destroy his entire ideology. This has the potential to do that to a person. To recognize and realize that, oh, it was all a lie. Oh, it was all a lie. That's the big thing. And I think the biggest reason why I'm so kind of emotionally connected and emotionally invested to this story, and just to reiterate what the story is for Ben, who's just coming in right now, that there is, on TikTok, there's a debate between a libertarian here, Benjamin Williams, and a fellow who goes by the moniker Rathbone, about the crimes of the Soviet Union, where Rathbone is simply asking Ben to provide evidence for his claim, and Ben can't. And Ben keeps making video after video after video after video where he fails to do so. And I don't think that he's making these videos for Rathbone or for even his own people. I think that he's making these videos for himself. Because I can't imagine what it must be like for him. As a person who's been trained by the Foundation for Economic Education, which is just like a propaganda outlet to create people like Ben, only to stumble in to this enormous, obvious, flagrant lie that you have been taught this entire time. That you have been taught this enormous, overwhelming, flagrant falsehood about the nature of your reality and the nature that you live in. Like, this has the potential, and because if they're lying to you about that, then what else are they lying to you about? That and the reason why I'm so emotionally invested in this story, and I know it's so small scale, but it's the reason why I'm invested in it is because I see myself in Ben. That when I was Ben's age, right? Well, and Ben maybe is a bit older than I think he is, because I thought that he was like maybe 19, given the manner in which he carries himself and acts. But when I was his age, I believed that Jesus Christ was coming back at any moment, right? I believed that Jesus Christ was going to come back, that a wizard was going to solve all of our problems. And so I'm quite sympathetic, right? Like, Ben has been heavily indoctrinated. Like, what we are looking at is a guy who has experienced a massive amount of indoctrination. And methane's got it. Simple solution. Everyone must stop lying. Like, I've said this about the Fraser Institute, and I think I'll say this about the Foundation for Economic Education as well, that the people who are coming out of these institutions are worse than uneducated because they think they know something. They think they know things, and they don't. They think they know things, and they don't. That's what makes these guys so scary, is that they're genuinely convinced. They're genuinely convinced that in the certitude and the certainty of their position, because they've gone through these massive institutions and they've been surrounded by people who are paid to believe the things that they believe by enormous billionaires and bankers and the Koch brothers and all of these sort of forces. And then they come out the other side and they get confronted by somebody just asking for evidence. Somebody just standing there being like, can you provide evidence for your source? And they can't. And they can't. That they're hitting a brick wall. And so I think we're watching somebody melt down. I think we're watching a person melt down if you continue following this story. And it's happening in real time, which I think is what makes it the most interesting. That it's not a retrospective. Yeah, I don't know anything about this, the Mises Institute, but if it's as good as the Foundation for Economic Education, then these think tank people, man, like these think tank people, and people like Ben, and I think another reason why I'm really harping on it is that these are the guys that are going to become the forefront of the conversation. These are the guys that are actually going to become the primary defenders of capitalism. Because as the system of capital reveals itself to be completely fraudulent and collapses so ridiculously, over and over again, the collapses will get more aggressive. These are the guys who are, because they're going to be the only ones who are left. They're going to be the only ones who are left. And that the billionaire class will simply fund and push these people forward because they will accept it. Like, the billionaire classes in other countries fund people like Adolf Hitler. Because Adolf Hitler stood up and said, I'll destroy the communists for you. Yeah, Ben is a part of the propaganda department in the Mises Institute. On his page, he says he's meant to convince Gen Z that capitalism is good. Could you see Ben getting into elected politics? I mean, I don't think he's particularly useful in that regard. Right? Like politicians are pretty lame. Like they're not really interesting people. You know? Like, I think being a propagandist is more difficult. I think being a propagandist is more difficult than being a politician. Because politicians don't need to actually justify anything they do. And they don't need to actually defend anything that they do. All they really do is just take money and then do what they're told. That's basically all they do. And they get into rooms with one another and have shitty conversations with one another. But really, it's like not really a conversation between two policy guys that are trying to work something out. It's just like, if there's ever a conflict between these guys, it's basically just Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk coming to kind of a loggerheads, and the politicians kind of being the voice, being the people who are like, okay, this is what I can do, like this is what I can do on behalf of Jeff Bezos. Like they're not really that. So a guy like Ben, I think, would be absolutely wasted, right? Because what makes Ben different than a politician is that politicians don't have to believe anything. They just have to do what they're told, right? They just have to espouse what they're told, and they just have to do what they're told, and they don't have to believe anything. Ben believes what he says. Like, given the actions that I'm seeing coming out of this guy right now, he believes what he says. And that's very valuable. It is extremely valuable to have a dedicated foot soldier. It is extremely valuable to have somebody who is bought in completely. That is extremely valuable. You don't want to waste somebody like that on an electoral campaign. That's completely meaningless. Ben, to answer your question, how do I join the Canadian Commie Discord? If you go into the description of this here video, you will find a link to my Patreon. You can donate even $1, and that'll get you connected into the Discord. I'll send you a Discord link. And there's a couple of people who I need to actually do that to, so I'll do that after this stream for them. So fucking tired, you guys. I'm so fucking tired. Like, I am. I'm just so, I'm not, sometimes I try to kind of grin and brave it and just be like, I'm just gonna plow on through and be strong for the stream but I'm not doing that today. I'm not doing that today. I'm fucking tired and I'm fed up. I'm fed up. I'm tired and I'm fed up. I'm fed up of the customers that come in. I'm fed up with the people I work with. I'm fed up. And the people I work with are good people. And the customers that I'm serving are fine, for the most part, with a couple of clear exceptions. But that's retail for you. And I'm just fed up. I'm fed up that we're all just supposed to walk around acting like everything's fucking normal when it's not. Like, when it's fucking not. By Austrian fascists, I mean during World War II, deeply evil. Yeah, the Mises Foundation had a connection to Austrian fascists. And on their own site, they argue that a truly free society will have a flourishing free market in children. Child labor. Does it actually say that on their site, dude? Hold on. Hold on. The Mises... Help me find this. Institute? Is it the Institute Foundation? Help me find this. Is this it? Bro, economic nationalists are wrong. Free trade means freedom and prosperity. The street of the palaces. Oh my god. Literally like jerking off Wall Street. Holy shit. Holy shit, dude. I did not realize that this is going to turn into this rabbit hole. Yeah, I just looked at Ben's first article written for the Mises Institute, and it's about how pharma monopolies would be good even if the prices are high. Children and rights. Children and rights. Bro. Children and rights. Murray Rothbard. There's a name we've heard before. Oh. I don't want to read this. I don't want to read this. Yeah. Individualism is good. Heh, interesting. Like, I look at this fucking, like, all to end up on, how are we going to end up on? We're going to end up on, can we hold children responsible for crime? Okay. You know, what's, you know what? The language is not restricted to product cover. I just, like, do I dare go into the mental gymnastics? Do I dare go into the mental gymnastics? There remains, however, you know how we're going to do this, guys? I know exactly how we're going to do this. I figured it out. We are going to do this together, okay? With the power of silly voices. The power of silly voices will get us through. There remains, however, the difficult case of children. The right of self-ownership by each man has been established for adults. The natural self-owners. It's so pretentious For natural talk like a normal person. On the other hand, it's clear that newborn babe is in no natural sense an existing self-owner, but rather a potential self-owner. But this poses a difficult problem. For when, or in what way, does a growing child acquire his natural right to liberty and self-ownership? Gradually or all at once? At what age? At what criteria do we set forward? Yeah, each man. What about women? Hey, whoa, Mr. Moon. Come on. This place was created by Austrian fascists. They don't care about women. Come on. The thing that I find really funny is that this is all about, like, self-ownership. That you should own yourself. That you are in charge of yourself and you have yourself. But, like, the entire system they espouse is based on slavery. The entire system is based on, like, that there are owners who own all of the property and own everything, and we should just sell ourselves to them. Like, this idea that, like, what, you're engaging in a voluntary and like, what are you talking about voluntary? Like, what are you talking about? Like, we sell ourselves to the system because if we don't, we would starve. Like, work or starve. That's how it is. You can't have a voluntary arrangement. You can't have any kind of voluntary conversation going on when there's this overt, obvious, very clear, coercive relationship that's happening that these guys simply ignore on purpose. Right? On purpose. But they're completely willing to have these incredibly robust, incredibly long conversations about when is it okay to start enslaving children? When is it okay? Because that's what this is actually about, right? When these guys talk about self-ownership, what they're actually asking is, when is it okay for a capitalist to buy one? Right? When is it okay for a capitalist to buy a person? Because there's clearly a line that we've set where we've said that, no, capitalists can't buy people under the age of 18. Well, you can have, like, a job if you're, like, 16, I guess. Right? That there is, like, a legal threshold. That you have to be of a certain age before a capitalist is allowed to purchase you. And that's the conversation that they're actually having here. They're not saying, like, when is it that a child becomes a full-fledged and gains a sense of self, and so on. It's when can we buy them? Just like we buy everybody else. Because that's the whole point of all of this, is to buy humans, is to buy people. That's the libertarian ethos. That's why they are so desperate to convince each other and everyone around them that what is happening is a voluntary exchange. That, these people are voluntarily exchanging their labor, and if they didn't want to sell themselves to us, then they would go do something else, as if that's even an option for most people. Like, we're living in this state of heightened delusion. And these sorts of conversations are just like, I think the thing that's getting me the most, is really coming to terms and really embracing and understanding fully that the people who are saying these things are not saying these things because they're actively attempting to be duplicitous. They're saying them because they actually think that they're true. And they just don't want to acknowledge the reality of their position and the reality of what it is, because if they did, then they would have to acknowledge that what they're doing is pretty dark. Like, what they're doing is pretty dark and pretty sinister. But nobody views themselves as dark and sinister. Everyone believes that they are a force for good in the world, and everyone wants to believe that what they're doing is justifiable or justified. that even if you get yourself into a position where you've done something that's wrong, your inclination is to first attempt to justify it as if you are the hero of that story, and that a viewer would look at you and say, "Oh, sure, that was complicated or complex, but it justifies itself." And no one wants to actually come out the other end of the conversation as a person who is unjustified. That everyone wants to be thought of as a hero, and everyone wants to be thought of as a good person, but the truth is that they're not. That's the thing that's hilarious. That at the end of the story, some people are just fucking Darth Vader. Some people are the Sheriff of Nottingham. Some people are like this. And Midnight Rose says, there was a time when eugenics was new and considered a real science. These people will pass into history, looked at with disgust, as eugenics is now. I think that we're going to see a resurgence of eugenics. I think that we're going to see a resurgence of eugenics. That the hand waving will be real simple. The hand waving will be, oh yes, those people were using eugenics incorrectly. That they were doing things that was incorrect. We're not doing those things. Yeah, MAID program, anyone? Yeah, what we're doing is humane, and it is voluntary. They'll use words like that, right? People are engaging with it with consent, right? There's not going to be any conversation whatsoever about how the structure of the system is funneling people into these programs because they don't have any other opportunities or choices, right? That you are dealing with a type of people who genuinely are saying to your face that the option to work in my factory or starve in the streets is a voluntary choice, right? That's what they're saying out loud in front of you in public every single day, right? In order to justify their system, in order to justify the slave system of capital. And so if they're willing to say that about you living, about you eating food, about you surviving in the world at all, if that's what they're willing to say about the most basic relationship that you have with your society, then the lies that they're going to tell themselves and the lie that they're going to tell you about their eugenics systems that they're most certainly going to do are going to be very similar. They're going to convince you. Like, the MAID program is a great example. We already have very clear examples of people who are moving into the MAID program because they are going to become homeless, right? That they are a disabled person who has a disability that isn't painful, and it's not like making them want to kill themselves, but because of the rising cost of living and because of the rising cost of everything, they are facing a situation where they are going to lose their housing and they're going to become homeless. And they know, because of their disability, that they won't survive on the streets. They know they're not going to survive on the streets. And so what are they doing? They're going to choose the MAID program because the choice for them has become die by your own hand in a method that is painless. Just go to sleep and don't wake up. Or die in the streets to exposure, to crime, to drug use, to any of this kind of stuff, right? So really the choice that they're having is have a horrible death or have a clean death. And the liberals and the fascists that are going to do it to these people will say, well, they volunteered for it. It was done voluntarily. They had to say yes, right? They had to say yes. They had to give their go-ahead. And so there's going to be no conversation whatsoever about the system, about the society that is funneling people into these choices. And the exact same thing is going to happen with eugenics. The exact same thing is going to happen with eugenics when it comes back. When it becomes in vogue, perhaps is the better way to say it. Yep, Isaac, good to see you. Disabled people are being denied social services and making them live with next to nothing. That they would rather die. And we said, look, they chose to die, yeah? They voluntarily went to the gas chambers. No genocide here. Yeah. Like, the phrase is social murder. That you can create a social system that murders people. That basically presents them with a set of choices, all of which equal their death. And as long as you don't discuss the nature of the society and the nature of the system and point out the truth of that situation, then you can basically just justify anything to yourself, right? You can justify almost anything to yourself. Cotton says, so anyone know what's going on in Kosovo? Why is NATO security forces clashing with people there? Oh dear, I don't know the first thing about this. Kosovo NATO forces clashing. Well, Fox News says, China fuels anti-NATO sentiment alongside Russia in support of ethnic Serbs fighting in Kosovo, right? So it comes out of Fox News, so you know it's verifiable. Absolutely. So guys, as far as I'm concerned, the story is that China's been meddling in Kosovo for far too long. China on Tuesday threw its weight alongside Russia behind ethnic Serbs clashing in Kosovo. Kosovo Serbs clash with NATO peacekeepers. Tensions high in North Kosovo as Serbs gather again. Dozens of NATO peacekeepers are injured during clashes in northern Kosovo. The NATO-led peacekeeping force said on Monday that 25 of its troops were injured in clashes with ethnic Serbs in northern Kosovo after they tried to take over the offices of one of the municipalities where ethnic Albanian mayors took up their posts last week. Oh my god, China! Yeah. I don't know, man. Looks to me like it's pretty standard fare that the people of the nation don't want to be ruled by this large-scale terrorist organization, right? Like NATO being the large-scale terrorist organization that we're talking about, right? That they're looking at NATO and they're saying to themselves, oh, hey, you don't have any legitimacy as a ruling body. You're unelected. You're not interesting here, right? Yeah. Peacekeeping forces doing a lot of heavy lifting here. Yeah. So it seems to me like it's a similar story to lots of other stories that are happening across Europe, where the people of the country are not in favor, or not the people of the country are not going along with the system. And just me, I mean, this is kind of a common thing that I see. I see this pretty often, where people say stuff like Serbs upset that Albanian mayors were elected because Serbs sat out of the election. But if the Serbs are sitting out of your election, then that really raises a lot of questions about the legitimacy of your election, right? Like, and I see that kind of thing constantly. Like, what gives democratic elections their legitimacy is the participation of the people. And if Serbs are not willing to engage in the political system, it's probably because they don't have faith in it, right? It's probably because they don't think it works, and it probably because they think it doesn't have any legitimacy. Yeah, NATO literally bombed Belgrade in '99. Why wouldn't they be welcomed by the Serbs? Am I right? Handsome boy, good to see you, bud. So to me, this is the story. Like I could probably dig deeper. And find out something clearer. Like, I don't know everything about everything, right? I think I'm just going to go along with what Fox News had to say. That China's meddling in Europe, you guys. It's going to overthrow NATO, so we got a real double down. Yeah, just me. I've been following the story since it broke. You just looked at it. Yeah, that's fair. I'm just giving you my 2 cents on it, bud. That, like, why would the Serbs not engage in it? Like, can Can you answer me that question? If the Serbs are not willing to engage in the electoral system, why would that be the case? Yeah, in Venezuela, the U.S. put a fake president who nobody knew who he was, yeah. Who's become like a joke, Juan Guaido. Why do people in the West think that we just attacked Ukraine for no reason? They can't analyze and ask questions? Greeting from Russia. Handsome boy, I gotta tell you, it's tribalism. It's straight up tribalism. It's just straight up, our team said it was good, therefore it's good. And Americans are, without a doubt, the most heavily propagandized people in the world. And it's not close, right? Like every country has a system of propaganda. Russia has a system of propaganda, right? Like we can all admit this. Where China has a propaganda system, Russia has a Chinese propaganda system. Russia has a propaganda system. India has a propaganda system. America has a propaganda system. The difference that I can see that of what's going on is that in Russia, the people of Russia listen to what the propaganda system has to say, and then kind of make their own decisions and listen to lots of other things. Right? And listen to other people's propaganda system, right? Like you in Russia are probably willing to listen to what the Chinese have to say and the Indians have to say and the Kazakhstans and even the Ukrainians, the Polish, right? That it's likely that you're taking a look at what all of these propaganda systems are saying and then kind of parsing and making sense of what it is for yourself from those sources, right? Americans only look at American sources. That they don't look at Russian news or Russian propaganda or Chinese propaganda or China. And if you provide a source that comes from outside of America, they literally will just say Russian propaganda and dismiss it out of hand. Because Americans have completely bought out, or have completely bought in to the whole concept of manifest destiny. We're the best. We're the greatest country in the world. We don't need to know anything about any other country. We don't need to know anything about our neighbors. We don't need to know anything. Right? Which is, as I say, one of the major pillars of the decline of Western civilization is the worship of ignorance. It's the worship of ignorance. That not only are Americans capitalists, because it's not just an American phenomenon, not only are capitalists ignorant, they're proud of their ignorance. That their ignorance is better than your knowledge. Better than your knowledge, that your knowledge is worthy of derision, that it should be mocked, it should be ridiculed, people should roll their eyes at people who know things. What's a good capitalist position is being boldly illiterate and being boldly ignorant and making giant proclamations and major statements about people from a position of total ignorance. And this is where the American culture has found itself. And it's why the culture is in a major decline. Because you cannot build a successful society based on principles of ignorance and illiteracy. You simply cannot. It's just not possible. And so the whole thing is going to come apart. It's gonna come apart really fast. And while it's coming apart, they're gonna bomb the shit out of lots of places, dude. I worry about Russia, by the way. Like, I worry about Russia. Like, the Kremlin got hit by a drone not that long ago, right? Like, the Kremlin got hit by a drone. I'm a bit worried that that's just like the precursor to a larger project, because the Americans are nuts. Like, the Americans are absolutely nuts. Oh yeah, this is a story that I had forgotten about. There's a massive Pentagon leak, Ukraine. So there's been something of a media blackout about this. What we know about the leaked U.S. Pentagon documents on the Ukraine war and the potential impact, like this is from the CBC, so it's going to be fairly whitewashed, right? You can see it's a small article. Basically, there has been documents that have been leaked from the Pentagon that now basically show how the United States it creates the blueprint for how the United States sought to engage Russia in war in Ukraine. Like, it shows that the whole thing was planned and was orchestrated. That it wasn't just, we're just like trying to be buddies, and then Russia blew up out of nowhere. It shows very clearly that the Americans knew that what they were doing was provoking Russia into a war. So we've got all of this evidence now, and the evidence has become overwhelming. But Americans don't want to believe it. They just don't want to believe it. That what they would prefer to do is they would prefer to go to war against a nation and then make a bunch of movies about how it made their soldiers sad. That seems to be how America deals with this sort of stuff. Is that they go to war and they blow the shit out of everybody. And then they make some videos a couple of years later about how sad it made everybody. Like, that's America, baby. Just me about the Serb thing. They sat out because of corruption. Yeah, bud. Like, so seems to me like you've got a huge section of your populace that doesn't believe in the system because they think it's corrupt. And so the outcome of this corrupt system is not something that they're, like, what have I been saying on this channel all the time? Right? Like, you don't need to follow the laws of a country that's ruled illegitimately. Right? Like, if like, take the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Right? It's a real easy one. Real easy one to point at. Because if you think that the Jeffrey Epstein scandal is unimportant, then I think that you're a shitbag. Just like a basic Nazi shitbag, right? That here's a guy who is running a pedophile ring for the wealthiest people in the nation, and what's happened to those people? Nothing. Like, nothing. You don't need to follow the rules of a system that's ruled by these kinds of people. You don't. You're not obliged. That the only thing, from a moral position or an ethical position, the only thing you need to be concerned about is the violence that they can inflict against you. That's it. Because that's how they're justifying themselves now. That's the way that they have chosen to justify themselves, is through the force of violence. Right? So as long as you can defend yourself against them, right? As long as you can push back against the violence that they're seeking to inflict, you are not obligated to follow their laws. You're not. And it looks to me like that's the position that the Serbs have found themselves in. So, good luck. Yeah, it's that American exceptionalism. We don't do propaganda, we just do news. Americans are the most propagandized people in the world, but they don't know it. They have been made to think that others are propagandized, yeah, which is wild. And like, and it's even internal, right? That if you're a Fox News watcher, then it's CNN watchers that have been propagandized. Whereas if you're a CNN watcher, then it's Fox News watchers that have been propagandized. So it's even internally. There's that kind of tribalism that's going on. And it is tribalism. Like, it straight up is tribalism. That, like, a big reason why people go along with things sometimes is that they just want to be part of the in-group. That's all. They just want to be part of the in-group. They're not interested in whether or not what they're saying is right or true. They're not interested in that. They just want to be on the inside of the in-group. They want to be accepted by the majority. This extends to a lot of Marxists in the West too, unfortunately, not just regular people. Yeah, I think that Midwestern Marx, Eddie, I forgot his last name. He wrote a book recently. He released a book that is he calls it The Purity Fetish, about how Western Marxists have fallen into a type of purity fetish. That Western Marxists create an idealized vision of what Marxism should be, and then criticize other nations for not meeting that vision of Marxism that they create. And of course, the irony of it is that Western Marxists are in no position whatsoever to criticize anyone about what is or is not communism or what is or is not Marxism. That perhaps it's the countries that have had successful revolutions and have successfully wrested political power away from the capitalists who are the ones who probably understand how to move forward in their own countries based on the principles that are in front of them. Like, I see all the time, like, Western Marxists are still critiquing China. Like, Western Marxists are still critiquing China. And they don't have a leg to stand on. They don't have a leg to stand on. If you are a Marxist in the West, you do not have the position, the intelligence, the wisdom, the wherewithal to criticize what the Chinese Communist Party is doing. You simply do not. You simply do not. That if you are a Western Marxist, your role when it comes to understanding Marxism in the world that it exists now is as a student, not a teacher. That you are looking at China to learn how Marxism and communism can manifest into the world, not the other way around. Not the other way around. Because you do not have a communist party. You have not been part of a successful revolution. You have not lifted 800 million people out of poverty. You have not created and instituted workers' councils within your constitution. You have not successfully transitioned your society away from like a capitalist hellscape into a much more egalitarian socialist society. Under no circumstances do you, as a Western Marxist, have any foundation whatsoever to operate from, because you are operating explicitly and exclusively from your own imagination, and nobody should give a shit about that at all. We should not limit the discourse of what is happening in the world to the imagination of some people who have never achieved anything. Like, we should be learning from the Chinese. We should be looking at China and saying, how do we learn from them? Our role should be as students, not teachers. And it is very strictly, and this is me being very harsh, very, very harsh, but I think it's absolutely true. It is Western chauvinism. It is straight up, we are white, therefore we are better thinking that you are falling for if you refuse to look at China as a student and not a teacher. Yeah, that's why I tune out as soon as they start going on about Dangism and China isn't socialist and all this. You have your country go through what they did with their struggle and their history. Yeah. Like, and I don't, proof's in the pudding, guys. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you're going to stand up and criticize Dangism, I'm going to be like, but it completely worked. Like, obviously, it completely obviously worked, obviously. Like, are you not seeing this thing? Are you not seeing this stuff? Like, are you not seeing it? Like, what am I missing here? Like, you see this gigantic, glittering, golden city on the hill? That it wasn't here 20 years ago. What am I missing? Like, it completely, obviously, 100%, no doubt, not debatable, worked, obviously. You see these people who are working, like, pretty nice jobs in the city and have clean streets and all this kind of stuff? Literally a generation ago, they were living in grass huts. That they were literally rice farmers, pulling rice out of dust holes. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this obviously worked, obviously. And your opinion of the theoretical kind of thing that doesn't match your imagination, I don't think it matters at all. Right? I don't think it matters at all. Yeah, Chinese people respect Deng and Mao equally. As far as they're concerned, Mao laid the critical foundations for Deng to do what he did. And they believe in the revolution. I think that's absolutely true. I don't know enough about this Command Genius to comment. I suspect it's for all the reasons why any state, like China is still a state. Like it's not golden. Like but it's probably to just shore up support. I don't know enough about this, bud, to comment on it. Yeah, I could put up with most critiques of China by Westoid Marxists, but regurgitating straight-up CIA propaganda and disinformation is embarrassing. Look, to me, it's just the proof's in the pudding. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, it's obviously working. Like, are you joking me? Like, it just seems like people still believe these guys are living in grass huts. Yeah, I think we're on the brink of World War III. I tend to agree with you, Radio Halifax. I think World War III is already in progress. That there's a lot of conflicts that are happening across the globe right now. There's a lot of conflicts that are happening across the globe right now. That it is extremely likely that there is going to be like a boiling over point. And the question is whether or not we're going to enter a period of total war. That's the real question. Like, is the whole thing going to actually move into a state of total war? And what I mean by that specifically, like, right now there are sort of general conflicts. Here, let's do the thing we haven't done this in a little while, right? Google Maps. I don't know when this changed to Yahoo. I gotta change that back. Whatever. I don't give a shit. So right now you've got. I just watched a great video about this, how there's all these conflicts going on around the globe. What's one that I actually remember? That, like... So you have, like... So Libya's a good one. Like, you have an internal conflict, right? Like, you've got 2-3 groups that are constantly... Ethiopia's another good one, right? Where you've got groups in the north who are trying to basically secure more resources for themselves, right? Like, and then that gets quelled or calms down, and then there's a group in the south, right? Sudan's another good example, right? Like, where there's these internal regional conflicts. And of course America gets involved in it, and so does Europe. They get involved with it, all the traditional history and all the traditional actors and all of that kind of stuff. And then there's also this rising sentiment amongst the African to support China, and so that whole engagement is happening. But like, everything so far is just kind of regional conflicts. So like small group, like militia organizations, right? Like, World War II was straight up a line of tanks and soldiers and men pushing forward against another line of tanks and soldiers and men. That's what I'm kind of talking about when I'm talking total war. And would such a war even take place given the type of weaponry we now have access to? That, like, in many respects, World War III is already underway. It's just that those who are fighting have come to sort of what I would call gentlemen's agreements about how certain things and certain territories, like, it is very clear to the West that this border, for the most part, is a line that cannot be crossed, right? That they can't just march troops up towards Moscow, right? And why can't they do that? Because Moscow will use nukes, right? So there are lines. It's okay to engage in conventional warfare what's called conventional warfare, even though some of the missiles and some of the things that we're using have like the same kind of threshold of power as the as nuclear bombs. Like this is what's kind of not well understood by most people, is that if you're using some of these missiles, you might as well be dropping a nuclear bomb. Like, it doesn't have the same kind of like dramatic mushroom cloud impact, but like it's just as destructive. Like we the nuclear bomb was made in like the 40s, the 50s, right? Like, you think we haven't advanced our technology since that period of time? Obviously we have. Like, obviously we have. And so, and some of the stuff that's happening in Ukraine are, so the question becomes, do we enter that kind of period of total war where we're actually moving into a place like Russia? We're actually moving into a place like China? And I think the answer is actually going to be no. That the way warfare now looks in the world is small regional battles, small regional fights. That it is actually truly a world war. That it isn't like a European conflict where there's a line of men pushing this way and there's like a line of men over here and they're pushing this way, and there's like a wave that comes through and all that kind of stuff. That instead it is about who has supremacy. That it is actually truly a world war, right? Like, World War II and World War I were called world wars, but like, they were European wars, right? It was a European war. It's just more Western chauvinism to convince you that, like, yeah, the World War, because all the Europeans were involved in it. The world, Europe, right? Like, oh, America got involved. That's certainly the world. But this time around, it is actually the world. Like, it is actually everybody is involved. And it's not about who can go in and, like, cleanse the land and seize the territory. It is about who can have economic control and who can have who has control of the larger world systems. That there's a layer of bureaucracy and a layer of like international politics that now exists, that is what they are fighting for. Who actually controls what happens in the world? Who actually controls what's going to happen? And there are red lines. So they can't just start bombing China, because they know that if they start bombing China, they're going to get bombed back, right? Like, mutually assured destruction definitely exists. But there are other things that they can do, right? That's why this whole Taiwan thing is such a big deal. And then, of course, you enter into the conversation that for Western forces, it's not actually about, for a lot of Western forces, it's not actually about winning wars. It's about having wars, right? Because as long as you're dropping bombs and destroying people and doing stuff, then you're getting money. Like, if you're Raytheon, right? If you're Halliburton, right? As long as you're shooting your gun, well, you got to buy bullets, right? As long as you're dropping bombs, well, you got to build more bombs, right? Like, so as long as you're having a war, that's all that really matters. That's all that really matters. So these guys aren't really that incentivized. Like, if you're Raytheon, you're not that incentivized to actually win these wars. You don't really care about that. That's not really what you're doing, right? You're just there to have wars. And as long as you're having wars, then that's fine, right? Then as long as the American taxpayer is willing to give you free money for nothing while you get jerked off by some little kid at Jeffrey Epstein's pedophile island, right? Then fine, everything's gravy, isn't it? So it's Command Genius writes, Xi Jinping not only has rejected class struggle, but has embraced class collaboration between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. I mean, I'm going to hard disagree with that. I'd like to see, like, why is it that you think that? Like, why is it that you think that? Like, what is it that Xi Jinping has done to convince you that what they are doing is collaboration between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie instead of improving the standard of the proletariat at the expense of the bourgeoisie. BRICS is a collaboration between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. BRICS is an acknowledgement that this is kind of what I'm getting at, Command Genius, when we're talking about like living in a place of purity versus what is actually going on, right? That China needs to operate in the world realistically, that it needs to be real. It needs to organize itself and actually, like, what are they supposed to do? Like this is a real genuine question. Like, this is a real genuine question. What is China supposed to do? It has the United States, which is this enormous barking dog, this enormous frothing at the mouth psychopath, who literally within living memory was carpet bombing Vietnam, was carpet bombing Cambodia and Laos, right? Committing a genocide in Indonesia, committing genocides all across this whole archipelago system, right? Literally leveling North Korea. Do these places look close to China? Do they look close to China? They look pretty close to China to me, right? That China has a major problem on its hand, which is the American military. And they know it's a major problem. And for a moment, they were able to sort of placate the West, because the West believed that China had been, with Deng, believed that, oh, capitalism won because of Deng, that they won. Well, that's not what happened, right? That what actually seems to have happened is that the Americans gave away the golden goose for like a bag of gold, right? They sold the golden goose for one of the eggs that the goose lays, which is their manufacturing base. That the billionaires in America, and all their great wisdom and intelligence, thought to themselves, I know how to make more money dollars that we print out of thin air for myself. I'll ship all of our manufacturing over to China. And so China will have their manufacturing base and use their manufacturing base and get all their research and get all of these resources. And we'll get paper dollars we printed from nothing. This is actually what happened. This is actually what they did. And now they're turning around, the Americans, they're turning around. Then the Americans are turning around and are realizing, oh shoot, China's actually a big threat now. Why? Because China has a powerful economy now. And where do they get that powerful economy? From the West. Why does China fund anti-communism in the Philippines, India, and Nepal? I mean, there is such a thing as false fronts. The West will happily say, oh yeah, this is a communist organization. Yeah, this is a communist organization and we're fighting against the tyranny of Xi Jinping, who is not really a communist. And we're going to institute real communism through a revolution, and we're certainly not backed by the CIA. So I think that you just got to be a little bit more skeptical about this. Like, what is happening to China right now is an enormous military front that is coming out of the West. That the West is putting military bases all around the South China Sea. The West is building up military forces, right? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm throwing into question whether or not those revolutions that you describe are communist in character in the first place. Like, you're basically making a very large claim, and I'd like to see a source. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see the source for your information. Like, you've got to show me that what is happening is that there are active communist revolutions that are actively happening, and then you also need to show me that China is actively crushing those communist revolutions. Like, I don't actually know what you're talking about. So the Philippine communists were funded in the Mao era. So what? It's literally 100 years ago. Like, so what? So 100 years ago, a group of people got some funding from Mao. Like, so what? Like, we're living in the modern era, where there are modern things happening, where we're facing modern problems, right? And as to the comment about BRICS, like, I think China has to do it. Like, I think China has to do it. Like, China is forced into a position where it has to open up trade ties to Russia, India, Saudi Arabia. Like, it has to. And you can criticize it, right? You can criticize it all you like. But, like, there comes a point let's take a look, bud. The New People's Army Rebellion, okay. This is an ongoing conflict between the Philippine government and the New People's Army and its associated organizations for the early insurgency from 1942 to 1954 for other communist armed conflicts in the Philippines. The New People's Army, often shortened to NPA Rebellion, is an ongoing conflict between the government of the Philippines and the New People's Army, which the armed wing of the Marxist-Leninist Maoist Communist Party of the Philippines is the world's longest ongoing communist insurgency and is the largest, most prominent communist armed conflict in the Philippines, seeing more than 43,000 insurgency-related fatalities between 1969 and 2008. So this is like an ongoing, grinding sort of affair. Because the National Democratic Front of the Philippines, which is the legal wing of the CPP, is often associated with the conflict, it's also called the CPP-NPA-NDF conflict, or simply the CNN conflict. The history of the rebellion can be traced back to March 29th, 1969, so after the Maoist period, when Jose Maria Sison, newly formed CPP, entered an alliance with a small armed group led by Bernabe Busqueno. Busqueno's group, which was originally a unit under the same Marxist-Leninist 1930s era Partido Comunista, which Sison had split, was renamed the New People's Army, became the armed wing of the CPP less than 2 years later. The president Marcos introduced martial law, leading to the radicalization of many young people and a rapid growth of the CPP-NPA. In 1992, the NPA split into two factions: the reaffirmist faction, led by Sison, and the rejectionist faction, which advocated the formation of larger military units and urban insurgencies. Several smaller insurgent groups eventually emerged from the split. This sounds chaotic, dude. This sounds like chaos. This includes the 1955 present Marxist-Leninist Revolutionaries Worker Party Rebellion and the Rebellion of the Marxist-Leninist Party of the Philippines and its armed wing. Here's a word, Revolucionaria. I can't. I'm too tired. The year 2022 was marked with the death of Sison and husband and wife duo Benito, the former being alleged leader of the NPA. Okay. So this exists, right? That there are communists who are in the Philippines who have been struggling the entire time. Yeah. I mean, there is something like to be said about this. And like, so what's the... This is a big, complex article, dude. Like, and so what's the critique in regards to China? Like, who is China funding in all of this? Like, who is China funding in all of this? Because, like, this is a lot. And, like, And so my questions begin to be, okay, cool. Who's the CIA funding? Since 2016, China has been funding the current fascist government. Can I see a source for that? Because, like, this is all about the existence of a communist struggle, right? Which I understand. Like, China has its own problems. Like, and then who's the CIA funding? Right? Who's the State Department funding? We're like doing a real-time breaking apart of what this situation. You can see the proof in the info box. In the info box. Belligerents. The Communist Party of the Philippines supported by China until 1976. So what happened in 1976? What happened in 1976? Why did the Chinese stop funding? Anyway, they stopped funding them in 1972. But up until 1972, so during the Maoist period, China was in support of this party, and then that changed. Belligerents, I love it. And then government of the Philippines supported by the United States and China since 2016. So China now no longer, so it used to support the Communist Party of the Philippines, but it now also supports with the United States. Mao died, yeah, there's that. So the United States and China both now are fighting against the Communist Party of the Philippines, which China used to at one point fund. In 1976 was when the Dengist policies were put into control. Okay. I don't know nearly enough about this, dude, to make any kind of statement. Honestly. I don't know who the leader of this country is. I don't know who the leader of the Philippines is. Right? That's a big thing. How much deeper do I really want to go into this? Because, I would imagine with China opening up and wanting foreign capital investment, they couldn't be seen as supporting ongoing revolutions if they actually wanted investment. There is that. There is part of that. That I feel that surface level take, that's a pretty certain, yeah. And, it does have this kind of, Trotskyist versus Stalinist kind of character, right? That the Trotskyists would say what we should do is fund permanent revolution across the globe 100% of the time, right? Right. I feel like you're making a gigantic leap when we don't know anything about this. What do we know about the government? What do we know about the situation, right? And just because a communist or socialist country needs to make deals with people who are otherwise untoward doesn't mean that they're not something, right? It means that reality exists. It means that reality exists. It just seems to me as though China put itself on a... Look, here, I'll be as mean about it as I possibly can. Okay? I'm going to be as mean about it as I possibly can. Okay? This is China. China cares about China. China wants China to be China, and China wants China to be the greatest. That's what China wants. China wants this place to be kick-ass. It wants it to be rich. It wants it to be powerful. It wants it to be big. It wants it to be. It wants it to have hegemonic power in the region. China wants to be an enormous force in the world for itself. You know what China doesn't want? China doesn't want a conflict with the United States, right? China doesn't want a conflict with the United States. China doesn't want to fight with the United States. It's said so very recently that they don't want a fight with the United States. It's the very, very last thing that the Chinese want. that they would like this relationship to be fine and good and strong. And I really, really, really hate to break it to you. This place, the Philippines, is not worth threatening that relationship over. Okay? Like, if I'm in the room and I'm the leader of China, I don't give a shit. Communist, Marxist, capitalist, I don't give a crap what ist or ism you call yourself. And the thing that's on the table is, we could continue funding revolutionaries in the Philippines, but it would mean threatening this guy. And that this guy will actually continue perhaps carpet bombing us. You see how they carpet bombed Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos? See how they carpet bombed Korea? You see how they split Korea into two? You see how they're actually destroying everything in the region? Just like ruthlessly destroying everything. Do you want to make sure that that doesn't happen to you? Okay, cool. Just give up your support for the Philippines. And China goes, okay. Tough shit for the Philippines. Like, tough shit for them. Like, for real. But China's looking out for China. Like, China's looking out for China. And when you've got a monster, like a psychopathic foaming at the mouth who literally was carpet bombing countries on your border, I feel like this isn't sinking in. Like, I really, really feel like this point that I am making here is not sinking in. And that you have to hear this. And I feel like you're not. I feel like you're not. I feel like you're not listening to this point. And this is extremely important. I need you to take this point in your thinking and put it much higher, much, much higher in terms of the orders of importance of how the Chinese look at what's going on. I need you to really raise this up. Because I don't think you're taking it seriously, and I think it's extremely important, and I do think you are ignoring it. Which is that the Vietnam War, the Cambodian War, the Laos War, the Korean War are all on China's border and were committed by Americans on the Chinese border. The Chinese could look across the Yellow Sea and see the bombings happening. The Chinese could look across the South Chinese Sea and see what was going on in Vietnam. That these conflicts were serious, they were devastating, they were murderous, they were psychotic, and China doesn't want it. China doesn't want it. China wants their cities to not be carpet bombed. China wants their cities and their roads and their infrastructure and their people to not be carpet bombed. North Korea lost 20% of its population. 20%. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. 1 in 5 people died in North Korea during that period of time. Every building was leveled to the ground. Henry Kissinger openly said, "Bomb anything that flies, bombs anything that moves." This was happening in China. And if you are not going to understand this, if you are not going to listen to the hard reality that China needs to negotiate with the people who perpetuated those crimes on their borders under threat of experiencing those crimes, then you are not seriously engaging with the subject. China is under the threat of a gun and they know it. They've always known it. And so when you come in here and start talking about the Philippines, China doesn't give a fuck about the Philippines. China doesn't give a fuck about the Philippines. China's not going to antagonize this crazed, psychopathic monster that was leveling cities, countries, infrastructure, people on their own borders over the Philippines. China's not going to throw away decades, if not a century, of diplomatic negotiation over the Philippines. It's just not going to do it. And to say that them not doing it doesn't make them Marxist is crazy. There is a psychopathic, crazed lunatic walking around with a fucking nuclear bomb looking to drop it. And China is going, please don't. Please don't. Everyone would be better off if you didn't drop that bomb. And so the United States says, well, stop funding the Philippines. Stop funding the Philippines, done. And China goes, okay. Don't bomb us. Don't bomb us. Please put this point much higher in the way that you think about China in the world and the way that China is operating in the world. China is not a god. China can't simply wag its dick in front of the United States. America has proven its willingness to kill Asian people, to massacre them and level their cities to rubble. China doesn't want it. China does not want it. China wants to be prosperous. And you know how you absolutely guarantee that your communist society is going to fail? Is if your cities are bombed to rubble. Thank you. Like, this is the scummy reality of living in the world, okay? Like, this is the scummy reality of living in the world. Is that, and this is the purity fetish that Western Marxists fall for. That they want to live in this theoretical space. They want to live in this purity place. Well, the world is not pure. The world is not clean. That you have to negotiate with psychopaths. You have to. China knows it. As I believe I put the video in the Discord, China has literally released statements, I believe as early as this week, where it's been saying we want peaceful negotiation and peaceful trade between us and the United States. Right? That's what they want. They know that the United States wants a war with them. Like all of this stuff that's been going on in Taiwan. China knows exactly what that's all about. They know exactly what that's all about. It seems to only be Westerners who are suckered into not understanding what's happening in Taiwan. It seems to only be Westerners that are going, well, what? Pelosi visited Taiwan. What's so wrong with that? What's so wrong with that? The Chinese know exactly what it is the Americans want. They know exactly what it is the Americans want. Henry Kissinger is still alive. Henry Kissinger is still alive. Like, the Chinese know exactly what's going on. And should the Americans force them to pull the switch on Taiwan, they will. They don't want to. They very much don't want to. but they will. Kissinger just turned 100. Kissinger just turned 100. You'll find as you grow older that the world does not have much justice. Mir Chamo, proof God doesn't exist. No, Mir Chamo. Kissinger's existence definitely proves that God exists. Because if the devil exists, so too does God. So, so let's take it all the way back around, okay? Let's take it all the way back around. Okay? Let's say that everything is exactly as you say it. That the Philippines is led by a fascist, a crazed lunatic fascist. Absolutely out of his mind. Just totally Nazi-level fascist. Philippines. And that both the United States and China are funding the fascist in order to make sure that a communist revolution doesn't happen in the Philippines. Okay? That's the narrative. We're going with it. Well, you know why China's going along with it? Because they know exactly what happens if a communist revolution happens here. They know exactly what happens if a communist revolution happens here. Do you know what happens if a communist revolution actually happens here? The Americans will begin carpet bombing it systematically. How do we know that? Because that's what they did in Vietnam, that's what they did in Cambodia, that's what they did in Laos, that's what they did in Korea. They will begin systematically carpet bombing the Philippines. They literally will start here in General Santos City. They will level every single building, killing anyone that they can see efficiently and effectively. After they carpet bomb the place, they will send in their death squads to begin systematically eradicating citizens. Then they will begin moving up the coast, blowing up this infrastructure as they go. They will destroy all the roads. They will destroy all the rail. They will poison the water. They will burn down trees. They will do everything they can. They will come to Davos City. They will plant a battle cruiser there, and they will begin shelling it. They will begin carpet bombing it with napalm. They will light Davos City on fire. And at the end of all of this, as the Americans begin to cleanse and purge the Philippines with fire, they will use that as an opportunity to create large-scale military bases in the Philippines. They will plant nuclear bombs in the Philippines. They will plant enormous hardware in the Philippines, all under the guise of staunching the spread of communism, which is exactly the reason they gave for destroying Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Korea. And so China's going, you know what I wouldn't like to have here is a bunch of fucking nukes in the Philippines for sure, 100%. So like, yeah, we're not funding. What are you talking about, communist? What are you talking about? We're not funding the communist revolution. What are you talking about? We're not funding the communist revolution in the Philippines. Whatever you do, don't build giant military bases in the Philippines any more than you already have. There just comes a point where like moral purity has to go away for practical reality. It's just the hard truth of reality. And it's especially true in international politics. Because there's nobody you can turn to. Like, China can't report America. Like, who are they going to report America to? So you can't, there's nobody to turn to. You have to negotiate with these people. And these people are psychopaths. You just have to make concessions. You just have to pick your battles. You just have to. And is it shitty? Is it scummy? Does it suck? Yes. I would prefer the situation didn't exist. But it does. And And I suspect that the way it's going to go is the way it always seems to go between communists and capitalists. Is that communists still fundamentally believe in the base humanity of capitalists. That this, in my view, is actually the great flaw of communists and Marxists generally, is that they genuinely believe that, well, these people are still human. These people still have, like, morals and ethics. We can still beseech to their, like their better selves and their reason, right? And you can't. And so the way I think that this is going to go is that China is going to do everything it can, and has been doing everything it can, to placate the American empire. And the Americans are going to bomb them anyway. The Americans are going to bomb China. Like, maybe not the mainland. But their goal is to destroy Chinese trade. Like, that's the goal. That the relationship that the Chinese are going to have with the Americans is going to be kind of akin to, like, piracy. Right? That the Chinese are going to be trying to trade, and then, like, a destroyer will show up and, like, destroy the trade vessels or try to board it. Right? And there'll be, like, these conflicts that go on all over the place all the time. Right? And of course it's going to have devastating effects to the American mainland, but we're not led by rational actors who are thinking clearly. Like, we're genuinely led, by people like this. Like, these are actually the leaders, okay? Like, these people are actually the leaders. And like people like Danielle Smith is actually the leader. Right? Like, these people are not sitting here being like, we're super smart, intelligent people who think rationally. It's people like this. It's people like this who live in a fantasy version of what reality looks like. Who, like, people like Ronald Reagan. Like, Ronald Reagan literally was a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. He believed that Christ was coming back at any moment. That there was a wizard coming back, and he was in charge of the nuclear systems, right? Like, the Americans are not going to act rationally. They're not going to act rationally because what they believe is a fantasy. Because the core of their belief system, the core of it, is complete narcissistic, arrogant fantasy. Manifest destiny. It's called manifest destiny. Like, destiny. Americans believe magic is real, and that the forces of the universe are aligned in order to benefit exclusively them. And that the things that they do will have positive outcomes because we did it. It's very much like the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline. Like, the bombing of the Nord Stream pipeline was probably the stupidest thing any country has ever done in maybe the entire history of humanity. Like, I really, really need you guys to get on board with this idea. That we are led by people who are fundamentally morons. Fundamental morons. Bombing the Nord Stream pipeline. The result of bombing the Nord Stream pipeline was that instead of Europe buying gas from Russia, it buys its gas now from India. India doesn't produce any gas. Where does India get its gas from? Russia. So instead of Europe buying its gas directly from Russia, they bombed the pipeline so that they could pay more to India, who buys the gas from Russia. They blew up a pipeline to install a middleman in a system that was already functioning. This is, hands down, without question, one of the stupidest things any organization in any country has ever done. Like, you gotta find some pretty special moments in history to compete. And these are the people who are leading. These are our leaders. They're dim-witted, moronic idiots who genuinely think that if we do something, it'll work because we did it. And so the idea that they're not going to go to war with China at some point, that they're not going to begin bombing in the South China Sea, that they're not going to begin destroying Chinese infrastructure, that they're not going to engage China militarily, because it would cause an economic collapse in the United States, doesn't matter to these people. It doesn't matter to these people. That the leaders of the country don't care if you suffer. And they'll probably say to you when they do it that these are going to be difficult times and we're going to have to suffer through it, but it's for the greater good. God bless America. And they'll create a whole propaganda system so that when goods stop coming from China, when things start to reveal themselves in the United States, when negative outcomes begin happening all across the United States, they'll just blame the Chinese and use it as war rhetoric. This is happening because of the Chinese. The Chinese are the reason why you can't get cheap McDonald's anymore. Oh, the Chinese. It's exactly what'll happen. And there'll be absolutely no conversation. There'll be absolutely no conversation about the reality that if America had have just not bombed these people, then everything would have continued on the way it was. Because the people who are running the show are not acting rationally. They are operating from a position of heightened emotion. That what they are experiencing is this emotional pull that we are no longer the supreme nation in the world, that we no longer own the world, that there are other nations in the world that claim a piece of the world and say that they have the right to govern that piece of the world, and that offends us as Americans because we know that we own the world. We have the manifest destiny to spread liberal democracy across the entire globe. It's fucking ridiculous. Like, it's ridiculous on the face of it. You've got to be a child to believe it. Like, you've got to be a child to believe it. And there are plenty of children in the discourse. There are plenty of children in the discourse. There are plenty of children in the discourse. There are plenty of organizations that exist to create children in the discourse. Plenty of them. Plenty of them. Like I said, the U.S. wanted to continue past the Yalu River on the Chinese border and continue into China. They wanted to nuke North Korea and China and completely annihilate them. The Chinese aren't dumb. I don't think the U.S. would do that these days. At least it doesn't feel like it would work as it has in the past. I don't know. I guess people are more aware now. Maybe I'm just an optimist. If you ask me, I actually think the thing that's really preventing the Americans from going like full mask off, like full fascist mask off, is actually simply the fact that the Pentagon and the American military have done an assessment of their own people they've done an assessment on the war preparedness of their own people and found that something like an outrageous number, something like 75% of people cannot be enlisted. That the American military, a force that is highly motivated to find as many recruits as it possibly can, has said that 75% of Americans cannot be drafted because of physical issues, because of mental health issues, right? Like, you can't launch a large-scale war of aggression and bank on the idea that you're going to be able to recruit a bunch of people if you yourself, the force responsible for launching the war, are saying that 75% of the people can't fight. And why is that the situation? Because America has destroyed itself. It's filled its food and water and air with poison. It's bombarded its news media with trash and garbage. It's made its own citizens fat, unhealthy, disease-ridden, because it was cheaper. And it made us more paper money dollars to do that. And so even if the United States wanted to launch a full-scale war of aggression against China, it can't. It can't. Why can't we just all team up against the US first instead of wasting our breath criticizing a country not practicing your ideal version of socialism? I mean, there is also that. Like, we should keep our eye on the prize, right? Like, we should keep our eye on the prize. It's sort of odd, frankly, that anyone would spend their time criticizing China. I mean, I actually think it's okay to criticize China for one reason and one reason alone, which is that we should always be very skeptical because China can turn. China can turn. Like, I don't think that we should be Pollyannish about this. I don't think that we should sit here and pretend like China can't turn. China could start bombing campaigns. China could walk into regions. China could start erecting concentration camps. China could start destroying places. China could start stealing resources. It could totally do that. It absolutely could do that. And so we should be aware and critical of it. When it does stuff, we should actually be asking ourselves, is this just so you can steal a bunch of shit? Is this just so you can go in there and steal it the way the Americans went in there and stole it? But until we start seeing that, then we should go along with what China is doing. Because it's working. Like, that's the part about it that baffles me the most. It's obviously working. Like, it's obviously working. Like, why are we pretending like it's not working? It's obviously working. Cotton says the United States literally bombed Germany, technically. Nord Stream was German stuff. USA did that to its friends. And we assume the USA won't turn a quarter of the world into a crater over communism and communism spreading? Yep. Especially when you have, like, the new generation of anti-communists, the new generation of fascists, are insane. Intentionally insane. Like, they've been rendered insane. On purpose. Right? Like, it's a big reason why I keep talking about this kid. Like, what he's doing is insane. It's insane what I'm watching. He's an insane person. And it's wild to see this kid grind away at his own ignorance. Grind away on his own ignorance. And to confront the hard reality that the systems, the multi-billion-dollar systems the multi-billion-dollar systems that trained him, are lying. What? Uh-oh. I feel like this is going to be the big one. What's Hazlitt, bud? Hazlitt think tank. Henry Hazlitt. Hazlitt's The Foundations of Morality. Good start. Good start. But he's one of the founders, though. Like, is this another... The Henry Hazlitt Foundation. There was an organization called the Henry Hazlitt Foundation, which actively promoted libertarian networking online, especially through its website, freemarket.net. The organization was named in honor of Hazlitt because he was known for introducing a wide range of people to libertarian ideas. The Hazlitt Policy Center. The Young Americans for Liberty announces the launch of the Hazlitt Policy Center to provide YAL's elected officials with modern legislation, facts, and strategies to give them the extra muscle they needed to be libertary legislators. Basically destroy the system from within. Ligand Disease says, I don't see China going down that road anytime soon. At least not on the scale and vileness as the European colonialism. China doesn't have an inbuilt ideology that promoted things like Manifest Destiny or Nazism like European Christianity did. I think that's true. That one of the big distinctions that China has, like America, even if you took it at the best possible way, even if you said it in the nicest possible terms, America's belief system still is, we are the best in the world, so you should be like us. That's fundamentally what they believe. That it's about spreading liberal democracy around the world. That America wants all of this to be liberal democracy like them. Because they view themselves as the best. This is the end of human civilization. This is the end of history. We don't need to critique ourselves anymore because this is the greatest. It never gets any better. That's the fundamental belief of what Americans have. China, on the other hand, says, no, we're the best country in the world, so stay away. No, we're not interested in you. We're the best. We want our country to be the best because we are the best. Look at all our stuff. Look at all of our history. Look at how cool and awesome we are. Stay out of here. Go away. You're messing it up. And that's fundamentally the difference. That America is always projecting outward. It's like, and I think this is a fine analogy to make. It is like a highly emotional person who projects their emotions into the world around them and deflects criticism into projection, whereas China is always looking inward. Is always looking inward, because that's a more mature thing to do, is to look inward. Never mind, he was at another position at FEE called a Hazlitt content creator. Yeah, it's not better. Like, not better, dude. Like, this libertarian shit, like, it's so crazy to me. Like, the solution to our problems is just sell yourself harder. You just need to sell yourself harder. That's the better way. True freedom is in selling yourself the most effectively. That's the libertarian position. It's wild. It's like straight up like some 1984 stuff. Like, you guys know I don't like to use 1984 as the connection, but it's exactly what it is. It's this, like, ignorance is strength, war is peace kind of thinking. It's wild. Oh, Ben had a debate with Midwestern Marx and got destroyed? That's hilarious. That's another thing, man. Like, I don't know why people feel like they're gonna walk into a debate with Eddie and walk away clean. Like, I don't know why they think they're gonna actually win these debates. Like, it's kind of wild, actually. And it's more evidence to show, though, that, like, they feel like they feel like they are right. You know? That they feel like they are right. Midnight Rose says, Xi has done more to push back towards socialism than previous leaders from what I've seen. From anti-corruption drives to planning for socialism by 2050 to talking more about Marxism, it seems good. I think the thing that bothers me the most about right-wingers is that so many of them are so close to getting it, then drop the ball last second. Yeah, I think that Xi Jinping is doing what Deng and Mao both did, which is rule by consensus. That Mao, I think, was probably the biggest personality, because I think you have to be a big personality to do the things that Mao did. And so I think a lot of his ideas got a lot more credence. People went along with Mao a lot more. But I think since Mao, people have been ruling essentially by consensus. That we talk a lot about Deng, but Deng was ruling by consensus. Like, Deng wasn't just like walking into a room being like, do this or I'll execute you. Like, that's not what was happening. That there was a lot of conversation and a lot of consideration, a lot of ideas and a lot of thought. And so they were ruling by consensus. And so, and that to me seems to be the major, a pretty major difference in how China is running its society. Is that it's running by consensus and this constant, like, this building that we are literally watching the Chinese build their society and build their productive forces. That the chain from Mao to Deng to Xi Jinping isn't perfect, obviously. Like, Mao was very concerned about Deng and Dengism generally, for good reason. Like, it sounds very suspect, doesn't it? Like, and especially if you were Mao, who literally was fighting wars, right? But I think that the people of China took a look at Deng and took a look at what he was saying and went, yeah, we can do that. If we can fight a war in order to chase imperialists out, if we can industrialize our country, if we can face all of these hardships, then we can do this too. We can do this too. And I think that they went along with Deng and the Dengists and their whole idea. And it built upon what Mao did. It didn't tear it down. Because that's what Mao and Maoists were generally concerned about. Is that the Dengists were going to come in and destroy what the Maoists had achieved. But that's not what happened. That the Maoists achieved something and the Dengists improved it, and now Xi Jinping is continuing that improvement. That it's a constant building upon. And I'll be very, 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 very interested to see who the next leader of China is and where they go. That if their plan is to achieve something by 2050, I want to see it. I want to see it, and I want to see what it looks like. Yeah, and the right-wingers, like, far-right people especially, like your PPC-type people, I've said it over and over again, I'll keep saying it. When it comes to diagnosing the problem, they really do get it. They really do get it. It's when they come to finding solutions, right? Like it's like they're looking at a cancer-ridden body, and the liberals and the conservatives are both going, "This body is fine," and the communists are going, "That's a cancer-ridden body," and then the PPC people, the libertarians, go, "That's a cancer-ridden body," and it's like the communists and the libertarians look at one another and go, "Good. Cancer-ridden body." And then the communist goes, well, the solution is obviously to, we could, or not obviously, but the solution is like we could do chemotherapy and we could like cut them open and maybe remove tumors and stuff, right? And then the libertarian goes, the solution is to light the body on flame, is to introduce more cancer. The solution is to find a super cancer and put the super cancer into the body, and the super cancer will eat the weaker cancer, and then the body will be healed with the super cancer. And you're like, but what about the super cancer? And they're like, you're just lazy. That's like how the conversation sounds. It's just like, it's annoying. Yeah, ignorance is peace. Sell yourself harder. Landlords provide shelter. Yeah. Yeah, the reactionaries have gone so insane that Ted Cruz, of all people, can't even say the death penalty for gay people is bad. A truckload of rightists turned on him for that. Are you kidding me? Like, that's fucking crazy, dude. Also, Xi has discredited Mao and called the Cultural Revolution a failure. Did he? Did he call the Cultural Revolution a failure? I'd like to see that quote. I'd like to see that source. Because, like, Xi Jinping has been very respectful to Mao. And, like, during the previous, the centennial, was it anyway, during the big event that they had recently, I forget what the hell it was called, he literally showed up wearing Mao's outfit. And, like, dressed as Mao. And that, I've never seen him say anything except positive things about Mao. So I'd be very surprised to see him say something as bald as the Cultural Revolution was a failure. Like, I could see him saying, like, the Cultural Revolution had problems. And I think most Chinese people acknowledge that. Like, if you ask me, a big reason why I think people do move towards the more Dengist way of looking at the world is because Mao's view of things was, like, the Great Leap Forward. Right? Like, that's how Mao viewed things. That Mao's ideas were this big jump forward. This big thing. But boy, howdy is that hard. It's hard. And while they achieved it, and they did some things, I think a lot of Chinese people were like, boy, howdy, that was tough. Boy, I could use a little bit more calmness. I could use things being a little bit calmer than that. And I think that's what Deng sort of promised. Deng was a bit more, not a bit more, Deng was straight up just like more incremental reform. More just slow and steady. More just like little building over time. Whereas Mao's idea of big chunks. Big chunks. I think it took a lot out of them. Well, and again, like, Midnight Rose is very critical of Mao, still respect him. Like, every single leader has faults. Every single leader has faults. Every single person has faults. These people are not gods. They're not wizards. Right? Every single time a leader takes the stage, they can and should be criticized. And they definitely, as a guarantee, do things wrong. Definitely. 100%. How do we know? They're a person. That's how we know. Right? But that doesn't discredit them. That doesn't mean that they're not worthy of our respect. Like what, you think Michael Jordan scored every shot he took? You think Wayne Gretzky hit every goal? Like, and leading a country is a bit tougher. A bit tougher. And especially if you're trying to embark on a path of Marxist thought, which is like new. It's like a whole new thing, right? Like, mistakes will happen. Mistakes will happen. And to me, I think my big critique of Mao, and it's not really a critique, more just sort of a statement of the reality of who he was, is that he was very militant. And I think people were tired of it. Like, by the time his retirement was coming along, and by the time Deng came in and all that kind of stuff, I think people were very much like, okay, cool, like, all this militancy was great when we were at war, but now we don't want that. And I think that that's fine. I just think that's who he was. China goes to other countries and asks, do you want to trade? And if they agree, they trade regardless of the kind of government they have. The U.S. goes and takes it, and if they refuse, they bomb them. Yeah. China doesn't make the country restructure their economy and open up foreign privatization with the IMF. Yeah, for sure. many Chinese people don't look at the Cultural Revolution too fondly. They see it as a mistake. Not to say there aren't any positives to come out of it. Yeah, I mean, the Cultural Revolution, I just think it'd be fucking exhausting. Look, this is it, right? Like, every time anybody explains the Cultural Revolution to me, I think to myself, that would be a wild time to live in. Boy, would that be exhausting. Boy, would it be exhausting. Literally people like rolling up to your town, being like, we're relocating you, come on everybody, let's go. Literally everybody rounding up all the metal they have and throwing it into big cauldrons, and literally just these enormous, massive projects constantly. Everybody being kind of thrown into it all the time. I could definitely see how people would be like, okay, you know, I just kind of want to sit down for a minute. I just maybe want to sit down for a minute. Like, I think that, and again, I think it's not so much a criticism as it is like an acknowledgement of the character of Mao, which is like, the guy fought a fucking war. Like, he fought a war and won. And I think he wanted that energy to continue. He wanted that energy to continue. And I think the people of China themselves were like, whoa, but can we please, like, sit in a chair and drink some tea for a second? And that's more or less what I see as it happened. And that Deng came along and was like, yeah, we can be a bit more casual about this. We got ideas, we got thoughts about how we can do this without it being constantly... And I think the people of China more or less were like, good, yeah, good. Little bit calmer. Yeah, libertarians want more cancer. The invisible hand of cancer. What a great analogy. I don't know if it was a great analogy, but it was an analogy. The invisible hand of these nuts. I'll post the source in the Discord. During the Cultural Revolution, Deng was targeted. Yeah, that's true. That, like, I would like to dig in a little bit more about the conflict between Deng and Mao. Because that's obviously a political rivalry. Like, there's no reason to dick around with it. Like, obviously that's true. It's impressive that the legacy of Mao didn't get discarded, and and Deng didn't seem to insist to want to do that, which I think is interesting. It seems to me that Mao and Deng had a different perspective of how to move forward, and that the people of China and that the people who were involved in the process went Deng's way. And I think they went Deng's way for exactly the reasons that I described. I think they were exhausted. Like, doing this war followed up by the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, all that kind of stuff, sounds fucking exhausting. I bet the people of China were just sick of it. And simultaneously, I bet you those, not I bet, I'm dead positive that those policies succeeded. Like, that the Cultural Revolution and that the Great Leap Forward and all that kind of stuff worked. And but at the end of it, the people of China were like, okay, great, cool, ready for a nap. And I think that's kind of what Deng was all about. That we can do this a little bit chiller. Yeah, even Lenin said that in a proletarian state, like any state, there would be excesses. We should fight against those excesses. Yeah. I've met many Chinese that have been there for a long time and no idea the transformation China has gone through. And have no idea the transformation China has gone through in recent years. Oh, you've met many Chinese that have been here for a long time and have no idea the transformation China has gone through in many years. Yeah, it's not like the West is, like, particularly interested in illuminating people. It's not like the West is interested in being like, hey, let's tell you all about what's going on in China. Let's tell you all about the National People's Congress. Let's tell you about the Communist Party of China. Let's give you the history of Mao and Deng and Xi Jinping. Let's talk about Juntao and all these guys. Let's talk about the history of China. No, they're not doing any of that. They want you to think China is, like, literally that racial stereotype from Looney Tunes cartoons. Like that's what they really want you to think of when when you think of China. They want you to think of like the like Kung Fu Panda. Like that's really what they want. They want you to think of Kung Fu Panda. That it's all like paper huts, right? Rice bowls, right? Like cute pandas. Like they don't want you to realize how modernized China has become. They certainly don't want you to realize that in many respects China has become more modern, and like the transit systems in China. Like, are you kidding me with this? Let's take a look at it, because it's here. Okay, here's China. Okay, China. Here's the United States. Okay. China. And a good amount of this is high-speed rail. A good amount of this is high-speed rail. 0% of this is high-speed rail. 0% of this is high-speed rail. Then you come to Canada and it gets even more stark. Right? Like, I hope that China gets that moon base up and running, dude. Not because I'm particularly fascinated by space. Not because I'm like sitting here being like, space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the USS Enterprise. Its continuing mission. Like, just because I think like the Chinese having a moon base would be like the biggest possible dunk on America ever. Like, we're shooting billionaires into space and the Chinese are like, we have a moon base. Like, yeah, the high-speed rail is nearly free for regular Chinese people too. It's something like 17 cents. That's wild. They want people to think of the dynastic era of China before communism ruled China. Yeah, like what Falun Gong pushes. Absolutely. Absolutely, dude. The Falun Gong stuff. And what's scary about the Falun Gong stuff is I went to their show. I went to that show. The Shen Yu. Right, if you don't know about this. Shen Yun. Yeah, I definitely went to this show. Shen Yun. China before China. And what is... Give me a real good picture. Oh my God, come on. Ugh. That's a beautiful picture right there. Give me this picture. I need to get back to Google, dude. This Yahoo stuff. Oh my God. Oh my God. Open a new tab. There we go. Reviving 5,000 years of civilization. Shen Yun. What is scary about Shen Yun is that it's quite effective. That the dancing, specifically the dancing, is very, very beautiful. That the dance and the costumes, the sets. Yeah, demand better. Good to see you, bud. Canada has fallen so far behind on rail infrastructure compared to China. Well, everybody has compared to China, but like we are literally at zero. Like, we're at nothing. And the idea that like capitalism's the best system, except when it comes to building things, creating social systems. So Shen Yun, the funniest part, but also kind of the scariest part, is that they lure you in, they woo you in, and the dancing is quite beautiful. And then the story that they tell, and they tell a story at the end, is very straightforward. That all of this like beautiful art that you've been watching is all about China before the communists. And then the story that they tell is that the communists come in and wipe all of this beautiful stuff that you've been engaging with away. And of course ignoring like the whole idea of like, yeah, maybe these artists did get chased out, but they were working for monarchists, and like they were part of a monarchical system that was oppressing the people of China. But in any case, and my favorite part is that they had a projecting wall on the back where they would project images, and at one point a tsunami wave, like a big wave of water, is coming to wipe away the city, right? And then on the wave appears the face of Karl Marx, right? And when Karl Marx's face appeared, I laughed. Like, I genuinely laughed. Because it was, like, bit on the nose, and his eyes were, like, glowing red. He had the hammer and sickle on his forehead, right? The wave of communism coming to wash away. And then the god of Shen Yun popped up out of the back and, like, banished away the wave and saved the town from the evil Marxist face wave of communism. And then there's a beautiful dance number, and they all took a bow, right? I was like, but so what was scary about that? What was scary about that is that it was effective. Is that I really walked out of there believing that gullible Westerners, so most of them, could walk in to see this, believe that the dance and all of the art that they saw didn't just continue in China, as if they're not doing this sort of stuff in China still. That it's unique to China before the Communist Party, and that you would walk out believing that communism is evil because it's victimized these beautiful artists. And if you were like a housewife, I think that you would be taken in by this. I think that you can be taken in by this. And Falun Gong has done a very good job of obfuscating itself in all of this. And if you don't know Falun Gong, I did a big thing on Falun Gong a while back. Falun Gong is a cult. Here's their symbol. Here's their symbol. What's it look like? My favorite thing that liberals do to act as a bit of apologists on this is they say, well, that's that's a symbol for peace in Hinduism, and so it's our Western perspective that's really, yeah, okay. Falun Gong started in the 90s. Yeah, the early 1990s. So this idea that they are using this kind of icon and this kind of sign disconnected from the understanding of what this is, fuck you. Like, stop with your Nazi apologencia. The leader, what's his name? Li? Is it this? Li Hongzhu is a racial purist who espouses a doctrine where he believes he can turn invisible and fly. This cult, on July the 20th, 1999, the CCP leadership initiated a nationwide crackdown and multifaceted propaganda campaign directed against the practice. It blocked internet access to websites that mentioned Falun Gong. It declared Falun Gong a heretical organization that threatened social stability. Falun Gong practitioners in China are reportedly subject to a wide range of human rights abuses. Yeah, it's fine to abuse Nazis. Straight up. Like, it's fine to abuse Nazis. I'm just going to put that on the table for everybody. It is 100% always okay to abuse Nazis. You are always right. Yeah, also China is aware what happened in Japan. See Aum Shinrikyo. Let's do that. Aum Shinrikyo. Oh. We got it. We did it. A Japanese religious movement and doomsday cult founded by Shoko Ashara in 1987. It carried out the deadly Tokyo subway sarin attack and was found to have been responsible for the Matsumoto sarin attack. Yeah. Like, religious cults are dangerous. No rational society should tolerate their existence. We've built our entire society on the idea of religious cults. Wonk, 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 wonk. And it's especially fun because this particular religious cult is literally walking around with a Nazi swastika. Like, what do you need? Like, what do you need? Yeah, it's a pagan symbol. Right. Right. All right. All right, guys. I'm going to end it here. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. I'll be on tomorrow, Midnight Rose. 6 o'clock, Eastern Standard Time. Good luck. We're going to need it.